Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this study huddle for AdWords Mobile. It's a Hangout on air, live on air, and I'll be going through a presentation to take you through some of the sort of top things you need to know about mobile advertising in order to pass the exam. The idea is that we'll go through this session. It probably will take about 45 minutes. And at the end, there'll be the opportunity to ask some questions. And to ask questions, what you want to do is ask questions underneath where you're watching this video. There's a place to type your question. And if you can get them in as soon as possible, that means that when we finish the session, there'll be time to go back and ask. The questions will be there ready for me to answer when we get to the end. We'll now kick off. We're going to have, I'll do a quick introduction to who I am. My name is Lucy Johnston. I run a very small agency myself, bread and butter marketing. My background is I spent 7 years working at Google in Dublin, working on AdWords and YouTube, and I then left and set up my own agency, and I also work for Google through another agency called AdWords, doing this sort of training. So I've passed all these exams, some of them many times, and I've put together this presentation to try and help you all get through the exam. Hopefully you've all been studying the things that Elizabeth has been posting on the Google Partners forum, and you'll be able to then use this as a quick refresher. And then if I were you, I would try and pass the exam this afternoon while you've got everything still fresh in your mind. And remember, there's prizes for anyone who passes within the next 2 weeks, so it's worth having a go. Right, well, let's move on and start. I'll show you the agenda. We're going to talk about, there are going to be 5 different sections that we're going to talk through. The mobile overview to start with, and then bidding and targeting, mobile ads, we're going to talk about measuring, and then lastly we're going to talk about taking the test. I've just got a few tips and tricks for you about taking the test if you haven't done the test before, or any test before. So let's talk about a mobile overview. In the exam there's quite a lot of content about the mobile opportunity and the different, a lot of focus on the statistics behind mobile. It's something that Google has been working very hard to do, is to prepare statistics to make sure that everyone is aware quite how big the mobile opportunity is. They would argue that we are all massively, the advertising time and effort and budget is lagging the amount of time that people are actually spending on their smartphones and using the mobile internet and mobile apps. So Google's put together quite a lot of statistics to demonstrate how important that opportunity is, and in the exam there are quite a few questions about some of those statistics. So I'll go through a few of them with you now. Smartphone and tablet adoption has increased rapidly in recent years. It's something that is fairly obvious to probably everybody on this call, that we're all using our smartphones more and more and more. We're all using tablets around ourselves, but it's something that Google obviously wants to make sure everybody's aware of. In the US in 2013, the most recent study says that 61% of people are using a smartphone. It's also a very local medium, so you'll see over here that 4 out of 5 consumers use search engines to find products, services or experiences nearby. So another piece of research I read was that most people are looking for something within 5 miles of where they are. Now that's something that's very different between mobile and desktop use. When someone's on a desktop, it's much harder to ascertain where they are, whereas if someone's on a mobile device, you can be fairly sure that they're looking for something nearby, which might change the sort of marketing message that you're going to be trying to send to them. Another statistic to be aware of is that 50% of mobile searchers purchase within the hour. Now that's not necessarily to say that they purchase on their mobile phone, but they make a purchase either offline, perhaps by calling up, perhaps by making the purchase through their phone, perhaps by moving to another device in order to make the purchase. This is something that I think Google is very keen to make sure everyone's aware of, because one of the pitfalls of mobile advertising is that because mobiles and smartphones are often the first port of call for when people are setting off to research a new purchase, they start off on their phone, but they do the actual conversion. They maybe walk into a shop and buy something, or they maybe move to another device, another form of transaction. So what happens is that the impact that mobile had in that purchase journey is not as obvious as it should be, and therefore we're not putting as much budget towards advertising on smartphones as we maybe should be, given how important they are at the start of the journey. So as you can see, the path to conversion is difficult to predict. So it's very hard to know, is someone going to start off on a mobile phone? Are they going to go start on a desktop? Measuring how that works can be quite complicated for us as marketers. Mobile usage, this is something that's also I found very interesting. Mobile usage is spread evenly across the day. Even quite recently, this was not true. People used to use their mobiles in the morning and in the evening, mostly when they were commuting to work. Often that was, or commuting to wherever they were trying to go. Now what we're finding is that people are using their mobiles throughout the day. So mornings, evenings, daytimes, night times. It's a pretty even amount of usage throughout the day. So that's something that, again, will impact in how we use how we set and adjust our marketing budgets, because it may be that traditionally we might have advertised to consumers on their mobile devices in the mornings and evenings, but now we need to be aware that even when they're sitting in front of a desktop, they may well be using their smartphone. So that's something, because it may have different features or something, another reason that they want to use it. Another phenomenon to be aware of is obviously the one about how smartphones users research products in store and purchase online later. So people, probably some of you will have done it too, you'll have gone into a shop, had a look at the products on offer, and then had a quick Google and a quick research to go and find out whether those products were available elsewhere nearby for less or for more. This phenomenon is called showrooming, and it's something, again, that people with large bricks and mortar stores or even small shops need to be aware of, because perhaps they want to market to those people, perhaps they want to do something to make that person in that shop buy then. Is there something they can do rather than potentially lose the chance to sell to that person when they go off somewhere else to go and make a purchase? Let's keep moving on. So if we're going to start thinking about promoting on our mobile phones, one of the first things we might think about is an app. So if you're going to build an app and promote an app, these are the steps that you might want to go through in order to do that. The first thing you really want to do is do your research. What is it your customers want? Now, I think all too often people are prone to building apps that are just another way of using the regular desktop website. Some of the things, if you think about what a mobile phone has, it gives some unique context that other devices don't give you. So, for example, it's very obvious where a person on a mobile phone is. That's something it's very easy for them to make a call. There are quite a few differences about people on mobile phones and also about apps. So an app, when someone downloads an app, they're likely to become someone quite loyal to your brand. So trying to think about how to build an app that is unique to that device. Another quite good example I remember was looking at an app someone built for an electricity supplier, and it was an app that allowed you to use the built-in camera on your smartphone to be able to take a picture of the meter and then submit that picture directly to the company, and that was a very easy, straightforward way of submitting a meter reading. Now that you couldn't do nearly so easily on a desktop or any other product, so they had designed the app to work with the features that were available on smartphones rather than just being the same as what was available online. Next thing you want to do is building your great app, and then the key comes is when you need to strategically promote your app. Now, there's a 60% of apps in the Apple Store have never been downloaded. So that's something to bear in mind. If you ever are behind working with an app, do have a think about how on earth are you going to get people to download that app. You do not want to go to all the effort and expense of building an app and then not having it being used. You then, I'm afraid, once people have downloaded the app, unless you remind them to come back and keep using your app, they may well forget. So the Google now has mobile engagement ads. These ads are to teach people, they allow advertisers to come in and target people who already have their app downloaded and remind them about the app and try and bring them back to using the app. Another thing you might want to do is spot the users that are using your app that are very valuable, and then again try and get them to come back to your app more often using remarketing. Lastly, what we really need to do is track everything that's going on in the app with analytics in order that we can refine and improve how the app has been built. Let's keep going. So the next we're going to talk about relevant context. I've touched on this a little already, but when you're on a smartphone, when your app or your mobile site is on a smartphone, there are a few things again that you can do differently than if you're on a desktop. So one of the big things is obviously being able to call, and it may well be that the primary focus for your mobile site or your app is to get potential customers to call the business. So how do you do that? Well, you make the calling feature a major part of the site and how it's been built, so it becomes very, very prominent. Whereas on a desktop site, perhaps you put the phone number right up at the very top right-hand side of the screen or down at the bottom. On a site or an app that's designed for a smartphone, you want to make that calling feature front and center, because it's one of the things that people are going to think about doing when they're using their mobile device. Fine-tuning the relevance and the convenience to mobile consumers, maybe it's about making sure that they're aware of how local your business is, or the business you're marketing is, to where they are now. Maybe it's providing lots of directions and help to get to where they are. This might also in turn drive store sales. So thinking about the context is very important when you're thinking about mobile advertising, because that context, it can be very different from the traditional context of someone on a desktop. Let's talk about optimizing your site for mobile. So mobile sites and mobile apps each cater to different audiences. If you think about the sort of apps that you have on your phone, there are many, many sites that you're using every day, but you may never download an app for those sites. So the sort of apps you want to have on your device are essentially quite different. And as a marketer, you want to think about, how am I going to persuade someone to download an app to their device, and what sort of features is that person looking for from my app? Apps excel at driving engagement and loyalty, but most traffic still will come from the web. So the people who do download your apps will become very loyal and very engaged users, but they will still always be a group of super users, whereas the majority of traffic to your client's mobile experience will come from the web still, rather than coming via an app. When you're designing for your site, think about the mobile experience. So don't just fit your desktop site to a mobile screen, for example. This is something you see very often, and it's why Google last year made the big change to the algorithm, search algorithm, that penalized people who were doing this, people who were building sites that were not mobile friendly. And they realized that people without mobile friendly websites were really, really putting off users in general from just using the internet on their smartphone. The more often people came across sites that were not mobile friendly, the more often they thought, I'm not going to bother browsing or searching for a particular site on my smartphone, I'll wait till I get back to my desktop or whatever. And it didn't Google's interests for as many people as possible to be using the mobile internet and using the internet on their mobile devices. So they really want to encourage that experience to be as good as possible. Some key tips for doing that: making your site as simple to navigate as possible. You want to make it really easy for users to move from one place to another, to find what they're looking for. So maybe having a search functionality, making sure the media is really quick to load. So any images, video files, that make sure they're compressed. There's a really useful section actually in the Google Search Console help, which gives you lots of information. It'll analyze your site and tell you that whether this site is quick or slow, and if it is slow, give you some ideas on how to improve that performance. It will also really help your cause if you streamline your text and don't put too much text on your mobile device, and for people on mobile devices, because they potentially won't have time to sit down and read it, or else it'll just be too small for them to read, and enlarging it will be too much bother for them to go to. A key one is having large touch targets, which means that the little boxes that you give people to click on to help them navigate through the site are big enough that even quite a big and clumsy finger can make it easy to use, so that people will thank you with their loyalty on if you design like this, that makes it much easier for people to use your website. Having mobile specific display ads can really help. So you're trying to make sure that when you're running display advertising, you think about having different ads for both the display network and for the search network, but equally within the display you have different ads for mobile versus desktops. A few other good best practices: offer user entertainment or utility or both. So you need to make it really useful or really interesting, or ideally both. Consider and also you need to think about what people are trying to achieve on your site. Again, I'll go back to that point about if you really want them to call you, make calling something that's really easy to do. If you want them to make a purchase, make that purchasing process as simple as you possibly can. If you want them to come to your actual location, make getting directions and your connections on public transport something that's very, very obvious, or maybe car parking details or so on. I've now got a sample exam question for you that is something just to give you a feel for some of the questions you might get in the exam. This is not a question that, not the exact question that will come up in the exam, but have a think about it. So within how long do mobile users make a purchase after they search? So the answers are 1 month, 1 week, 1 day, or 1 hour. Now, hopefully you'll remember back to my statistic earlier that said that 50% of mobile users make a purchase within 1 hour of doing a search on their phone. And that would be the question. So in this question, you would then select the answer 1 hour and submit that question. Let's move on to the next section, which is talking about bidding and targeting. There are a few areas in here that are slightly, again, different to advertising on desktops. The concept of having a mobile bid adjustment is something that came in fairly recently from Google when the big change in all the campaign setup changed. So but previously you had to have separate campaigns for mobile or desktop. Now what they've done is rolled everything in together, but instead of having separate campaigns, you target your ads and your ad groups and your keywords based on on making bid adjustments. So you're able to change the bid and adjust the bid that you make. Say, for example, you set up a keyword, say you were advertising for flowers, but you wanted people to advertise on flowers, and say you had the keyword Mother's Day flowers, and you knew that there were a lot of people researching, perhaps it was a month or so before Mother's Day, and there were a lot of people researching what they were going to buy on their smartphones. So perhaps you wanted to have a page of your site that was mobile friendly, that showed the entire offering of what you could deliver for Mother's Day. And in that case, if that was a page you particularly wanted to appeal to people on smartphones, what you would do is set up your ad group for as you would normally, but you would then adjust the bid adjustment for. You see, there are 3 options in this slide. You get when you go into the settings of a campaign, you then see the option to set the mobile bid. You can choose all settings or locations or ad schedule or devices, and you then, if you click on devices, you get this breakdown. Sorry. You get this breakdown here that shows you computers, mobile devices with full browsers, and tablets with full browsers. So in this case, you then get the option, if you click in this column with bid adjustment in it, you get the option to increase, or if you change this, to decrease a bid adjustment by, you can increase the bid adjustment by up to 100% and decrease it, sorry, up by 300%, or decrease it by 100%. And obviously, if you decrease it by 100%, what will happen for any one of these 3 options, computers, mobile devices, or tablets, is that that option, if you bid down by 100%, it will mean that that keyword will not show on that device. So if I wanted to have a specific, the flowers example, for example, if we were running that, we could move the, and we didn't want that particular ad to show to someone on a desktop, we could bid down for that keyword on by 100% on computers, and that keyword then would not show to someone searching on my keyword on a computer. So how do you go about setting bid adjustments? How do you choose whether to bid up or bid down, or how to do the bidding? You want to have a little bit of a think and look at previous sort of statistics to see what's going on and whether it's worth doing. One of the best things you can do with mobile advertising is make sure that, as with regular desktop advertising, you've got conversion tracking, e-commerce tracking, that you're tracking every single option that people can take on your website so that you know when people are taking them or not. Once you've got all of that set up, you can then run reports like this one here where you see whether the actions have come through computers, through mobile devices, or through tablets. Once you look at that, you can then decide which ones are worth bidding up for more or which ones less. If you see that people are converting much better on mobile, then perhaps you want to do a bid adjustment up on mobile, because you know that you can spend slightly more and get your ad to appear slightly higher, even and yet still make as much profit because more people are converting on mobile. So to work out, there's a useful formula here that we can use to work out what the mobile bid adjustment is. And what we do is we look at the mobile conversion rate and divide it by the computer conversion rate. So say we had the mobile conversion rate of 20% and a computer conversion rate of 40%, we would then divide the 20% by 40% and minus 1, and that would be how much we would end up adjusting the mobile bid. So you can see that if the mobile conversion rate is higher than the computer conversion rate, you would end up with a positive mobile bid adjustment, which would mean that we would increase the bid in order to show that ad in a slightly higher position potentially. Or if the computer conversion rate was higher than the mobile conversion rate, that bid adjustment would end up being negative. So that would mean that we would decrease our bid for mobiles by whatever percentage you get out of this formula. So I hope that makes sense. That's a formula that's worth remembering for the exam. Let's move on. You can use the keyword planner and display planner in the same way as you do on desktops for setting up mobile campaigns. So say, for example, you were a shop selling pizza, a new restaurant selling pizza, and you figured that a lot of people might be interested in ordering pizza from their mobile devices. If you use the keyword planner, one of the things that you can do is go in and as you would for the regular desktop, do in your regular accounts, you would go in and do a keyword search on order pizza potentially, and you can then in the keyword planner segment that out and see which percentage of searches are likely to come from mobiles, from tablets, or from desktops, which is very helpful because it means when you're trying to plan a campaign for a client, you can work out what sort of bid adjustments you might need to be looking at for mobile versus desktop, and whether they need to be thinking about having mobile-specific landing pages, whether you need to be creating mobile-specific ad copy. If you find when you use the keyword planner that nobody ever searches for order pizza on their mobile phones, then you don't need to worry about any of that. However, if you find that, and it's possible that more people search for order pizza on their smartphones than do from their desktops, then you'll need to think quite seriously about your campaign, about how you're going to target those people. So you're going to have potentially slightly different landing pages, you're going to have slightly different ad copy, because you want to speak to someone who's on a much smaller device, who's perhaps out and about. You need to give them more opportunities and different options than you would if they were on a desktop. Similarly for the display planner, if you're running a display campaign aimed at people on their mobile devices, you can use the display planner to look at options for where to show those ads. So it will show you the same information as it gives for desktop display planner, but it will show you ideas about mobile placements, for example, and topics and interests that work particularly well on mobile. Similarly for demographics and remarketing. Let's keep going and look at targeting now. So with targeting, we've got quite a few different options depending on whether we're going for the search and the search network or we're going for the display network. For the search and search network, again, just like desktop targeting, we can use keyword targeting. You get the option to target by location, so target users within a certain radius of a shop or a location. That's something that can work really well. Do remember you've also got your ad extensions that you can use in this context too. You can obviously target by language and also by device. In the display network, I'm really sorry, but actually that's incorrect. You can't target by device on the search network. I apologize for that. I'll just change it. I'll just remove it. On the display network, you certainly can target by device. However, and also on the display network, you've got the options, as you would on the regular display network, of contextual targeting, keyword targeting, topic targeting, placement targeting, audience targeting, and app targeting, as well as device targeting, as we were talking about earlier. So a few mobile-specific bidding strategies. Bidding strategies, as you're aware in AdWords, especially if you pass the fundamentals exam, there are many different bidding options. Unlike in the old days where you might the only option you had was to set a specific maximum CPC, and you then adjusted the bids up and down depending on the particular keyword. Now there's a whole range of options that we as advertisers can use in our AdWords accounts. So the first one is automatic bidding. This can be very useful if you're setting up a campaign and you've got limited time or budget in order to be able to spend a lot of time bidding up and down depending on different circumstances. And so it sets up, you set up automatic bidding, and it basically runs as an autopilot with the goal of getting the most possible clicks within a given budget. So that can work quite well, especially for sort of entry-level advertisers or advertisers who need a bit of help to work out where their bidding is going to go. Of course, you've also, though, got the other more complex bidding strategies, the flexible bidding strategies, which allow you to optimize your bids based on your key performance indicators, or KPIs. So, for example, there's the option to maximize clicks. So that says give us as many clicks as you possibly can for a particular budget. Another nice one, especially for mobile actually, is target search page location. This allows you to target and ask AdWords to try to get your ad to appear in a particular position. Now, on mobile screens, on search, there's far less space for ads, even with the new change that's limited the number of ads that shows on desktops. On mobiles, really on a mobile device, unless your ad's in position 1 or position 2, it's not there at all, and people will never see it. So if you're advertising, particularly on mobiles, you need to be thinking about how to get your ad in position 1 or 2. So using target search page location might be a good option for you if you're very keen to make sure your ad gets shown as often as it can. There's the target outranking share, there's target cost per acquisition, there's enhanced cost per click, and there's also target return on ad spend. So all of these are mobile-specific bidding strategies that you can use while you're running your campaign. Remarketing, as again with regular desktop advertising, remarketing is a possibility. So this is something you might want to use for advertising a mobile app, for example. And to re-engage users with an app, you can use the following strategy. So you can build remarketing lists, you can engage in proactive outreach. So it's really important to offer something unique. So if you're trying to get somebody to come back to an app, try and show that there is something unique about the app that will encourage them to come back and use the app, rather than just going to the desktop version or the mobile site. You need to explain what is unique about the app. So, for example, back to my utility company app, the unique thing that they have in their app is that with just one device, with your smartphone, you can take a picture using the device's camera, and that picture will automatically sort of go straight into the app and get sent back to the services company, who will then be able to add that as a meter reading for that property. Another thing you can do with remarketing is deep linking, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit later. But it's something that's it features quite highly on the exam. Actually, there's quite a lot about deep linking, and essentially what deep linking allows you to do is to link into a particular section of a mobile app. So, for example, say someone was using a particular a particular game app, and your client was selling in-game purchases for that particular game. So they might want to run an ad to a particular user who they know have used that game a lot in the past, and they could create an ad that maybe had a special offer for a particular in-game purchase, and they would then link that ad to the particular stage of the game that person, or to the particular product within the game that person might want to buy. So it allows you, rather than just taking someone to the home page of a mobile app screen, you would take them to the particular section of the app that person would be most interested in. Much the same as when we're advertising regular desktop text ads. It's very unusual to link a text ad to the home page of a website. Instead, you would link it to the particular page of that site that is most relevant for that ad. So deep linking allows you to do this. Another thing that's really important for remarketing is to track everything, not just the install. So when you're remarketing an app, or when you're marketing an app, a lot of people make the mistake of looking simply at the number of installs as the most important metric that they're going to be measuring. Now, once someone's installed the app, that's only the very beginning of the journey. You want to know how often they come back. You want to know what they do when they're in it. You want to know, do they make in-app payments or purchases? You want to know how long for a particular day do they use it. There are so many extra things that you need to be measuring to find out if that app install has been worthwhile, or if it's not been that valuable. And it's something that we really all ought to be thinking about, is tracking things beyond the initial install of the app to find out whether that app has actually been useful to us and to the consumer, or whether it hasn't. Another thing you're thinking about a little bit is targeting ads to people who've used your app using usage data. So you can show engagement ads announcing new features to current app users. This is something, so again, once people have got the app installed, you can use mobile app engagement ads, which is a campaign type, to announce new features to current app users. So you might want to bring them back to using your app again, saying we've got this new feature, we've got the latest upgrade, come and try it out now. It also allows you to remind people who've downloaded your app but haven't used it recently, so you might want to bring them back. I was thinking, for example, of perhaps there's particular sporting apps that only come around once a year, and it may well be that that particular sporting app might want to run a mobile engagement campaign, mobile app engagement campaign, to remind people in the run-up to that sporting, maybe it's Wimbledon, maybe it's a football tournament, maybe whatever it is, that allows that organizer to remind people that they have this app installed on their phone, and that might be a really good way of taking part and engaging in that tournament. It's always good to get people to upgrade to the latest version, otherwise that it might get buggy and they might get fed up with that particular app on their phone and delete it. It's much better to get them to upgrade and stay current. It also allows you to segment your target audience based on past actions. So say, again, back to our gaming app, maybe some people are really prone to making in-app purchases and buying credits for different things, and maybe others simply like playing the free version, and maybe you get a new free version update out there. So you might want to divide your target audience for remarketing into those who often buy and those who simply like the free version, and then you can make different messages for each target group. We've finished that section. I will just remind you that if you want to ask any questions, please do go back to the Study Huddle window, and just underneath where this video is showing, you can type a question and ask anything as we go through, and I'll then come back to it at the end of the session for us to for me to be able to answer those questions. I see there have been a few. That's great. So I'll come back to those at the end. So now we're going to talk about writing mobile ads. And there are a few things to think about when you're creating mobile ads. One of them is thinking about the overall network. So if you're trying to make some money from an app in particular, you've got 3 different options. You've got in-app ads. You can charge for app downloads, and you've also got in-app purchases. So those are the 3 ways that someone who builds an app can make some money from that app. To try and get more people to download the app, you've got the option of showing on many different places. You can show across the search network. You can show ads across the display network on both AdMob and display network. So the AdMob is basically a display network, but on mobile devices. So it's a network of all not all the sites, but of many sites who've opted in, sites and apps, sorry, to have opted in to the AdMob network. And through Google, you can now target the AdMob network. Google bought AdMob, and so through the display network, you can target AdMob's network of apps and places in which you can then show your ads. Obviously, there's also a big crossover between YouTube and smartphones, and you can reach users on their smartphones using YouTube. Another key part of advertising on mobiles is the use of ad extensions. I alluded to this a little earlier, but again, because of the unique circumstances of someone on a mobile device, ad extensions can be really fundamental in advertising on mobile. So there are 4 main ones you might want to be thinking about. One obviously is call extensions, which you can see in this slide here, demonstrated on this one. When someone searches for furniture shop near Chelsea, you can see that a little icon comes up with the option to call that business, and that's a call extension, allowing people to just call directly from the ad. Location extensions are also really important, and again, you can see them appearing with the call extension on this same ad. So underneath here, you can see that there is the option to go to the Notting Hill branch or to the Kings Road branch, and it will give us directions. If you click on any one of these little options, it'll give us the option to find directions from where the person on that smartphone currently is to take them to any one of those three bases. Two other ad extensions that work really well on mobile. One is the first one is site link, so you can see that in this example here, where people this London Reviews ad is offering extra links rather than just the main one in the headline of its ad to go to the best restaurants or restaurant specials, new restaurants, or the 1,000-point tables. So anyone who's interested in the Open Table site has the option not just of going to the main page that the ad is linked to, but to self-select to go to any one of these other 4 pages within the site. You'll also see underneath here is the app extension that's showing for that ad, saying "Get Open Tables free app." So this is an extension. So someone, this advertiser, opentable.co.uk, is advertising the primary thing it's focused on is getting people to come to its mobile site. That's where this ad is linked to. But within that it's also offering an extra option to people viewing this ad on their phone, that they could instead download the app here. So the primary target of this is not the app download, but it's an extra option that they are offering the people that they are advertising to. Something that you should be aware of for call extensions is that in order to be able to set up conversion tracking for your calls, you need to have an active call extension or call only ad before you can set up conversion tracking. Obviously, calls are very important conversions that you might want to track, but there are some others as well. So, for example, you could look at that. A lot of people who click on the location extensions and then click on get directions are people who potentially have then ended up coming into your shop. So you could use that as a basis, as a conversion in some way, so that, because you can be pretty sure that a percentage of people who've found the directions to your shop have then followed up on those directions and come into the shop. So that could be one conversion you might want to track. Calls are obviously something very important you want to track, and the more people use the call extensions option from their mobile phone, the more you can track that. And you can track a call. What I was suggesting to my clients is that if they will say, but how much is a call worth? And usually you can work it out. So if a client gets 100 phone calls a day, and from those phone calls they get 10 sales, and that the average sale value is £100, you can work out that each call is potentially worth £10, so that you can see that is something that is, you can then use that as a proxy and say that, well, on average, every call is worth £10 to this business. Let's move on and talk about some of the other ad formats that you get when you're advertising on for mobiles. The types of mobile ads that are available, you can have mobile text and mobile image ads. You can have mobile app install ads and mobile app engagement ads. Do you remember we were talking earlier about mobile app in a mobile app engagement ads? These are ads that are specific for apps. So the installs and the mobile app installs and the mobile app engagement ads are specific for apps, as the name implies, and they are designed to help people either install your app if that's your goal, or else get people to come back and engage with your app if it's already installed. There's also a fifth option, which is app promotion campaigns, and these are a separate campaign type that basically they do an awful lot of the hard work for you. So there's a template within these campaigns for the ads, and you fill in some of the text, and Google will then show those ads where it thinks they're most relevant. So it can take a lot of the hard work out of choosing placements or choosing search terms or choosing keywords for a particular campaign, and it will manage the whole thing for you. So if you're looking to promote your app in a big way, those campaigns can work really nicely. There's some people might at this point be wondering whether to use an app extension or an app promotion ad. So an app promotion ad, the key intention of that is to drive app downloads. So if someone clicks on an app promotion ad, they get taken to the store where that app is hosted. So if they're on an Android device, it'll be in the Google Play Store. If they're on an Apple device, it'll be in the Apple Store. And they'll then be given the option to download that app. An app extension, do you remember when we were in the last slide, this was the app extension showing here. And the primary focus of this ad was to take people to the mobile site, but the app extension was an extra feature added onto that. So that's the difference between the two. You want to, if your primary focus is downloading apps, then you want an app promotion ad. If your primary focus is getting people to your mobile site, but you'd also like them to download the app if they'd like to, then you can use a regular text ad plus an app extension. There's also obviously the option to advertise on video, and there are a couple of questions about this in the exam. So video masthead ads appear on Android native. So one of the things you can do is do a video masthead mobile ad, and these are able to appear on Android native apps, mobile apps. So basically apps that are on the Android platform, similarly to the iOS app, and also m.youtube.com. So it's on any. So if it's YouTube, if someone's using YouTube on their Apple device, you can show a video masthead there to them. If they're using YouTube on their Android device, on the YouTube app on their Android device, again you can show them a video masthead app. But it also shows if they're using just the regular YouTube mobile site rather than the app. The other options to advertise with videos are a TrueView in-stream, Reserve in-stream, TrueView display, and you can do that on a cost per view basis. You can also measure, another thing to be aware of is that when you're measuring conversions of videos, the two conversions that you can measure are standard conversions and also view-through conversions. So you have the option of tracking view-through conversions for video on here with these video ads. Moving on, a few other formats that you may not be familiar with. Lightbox ads. So lightbox ads are special interactive ads that allow advertisers to do something a little bit more creative with the ad space they have. These render responsibly on any screen, so they'll adjust their size to fit on any particular screen. They're optimized for taps and swipes so that you can interact with these ads on your device using taps and swipes. They also deliver rich media and video, so they're very customizable context that people can use. The other option you've got is the viewable CPM ads. You may have heard quite a lot of talk about this recently, that Google has switched to having a viewable CPM bidding. So when people were bidding on a CPM basis, on a cost per thousand impression basis before, even if that ad wasn't actually in a position that was viewable, it might be at the very bottom of the screen and someone never scrolled down to the bottom, you would still pay. Google's now changed that model and is now leading the way on this, that you only now pay for your CPM ads when those impressions are actually viewable. So you only pay 50% if your display ad is on screen for over 1 second. You then also have the option of in-app display ads, so you can show ads to people while they're in-app. So on many apps, so for example on my flashlight app on my device, I get ads for other advertisers who are using in-app display advertising in order to reach me while I'm using that particular app. Because if you can imagine, a lot of people are spending a lot of time in apps, so if you can reach them while they're there, that could potentially be very valuable for any advertiser. Let's talk for a minute about app install ads. So app install ads allow you to create text, banner, image, and interstitial ads. Now, I'm going to mention the interstitial ads, but I think they're being phased out now to drive users to the App Store. So this is the sort of promotion that's really trying to get people simply to download the app. Mobile app install campaigns focus on getting more people to download the app and allow you to select an app, and Google will then help with customizing the rest of the campaign targeting. This is the one I was talking about earlier, this campaign type that is completely specific to apps, and they're called mobile app install campaigns. And when you're selecting the option, when you're creating a campaign, you've got a bunch of different options, and this is the one called mobile app install campaigns, and you may not have used them yet, but it's worth going in and having a look around, especially in advance of taking the exam, because you'll just get a feel for how it works, and you'll get much better idea of what's possible and what's available. App install ad campaigns can run on the display network, on the search network, and on YouTube. So they've got a pretty broad reach, and as I was saying earlier, they're very simple to set up because Google does most of the work for you. You customize the template that they've got using your own text and perhaps an image, and they then set them off and run them where they think they're most likely to do best. So here's a slide about app engagement ads. We've talked about these a little bit before. As you remember, these are ads that are trying to get people to come back to an app that's already been installed on their device. So app engagement campaigns are focused on getting people who haven't installed the app to use it again. They're customized ads to app users, and their flexibility for counting conversions, bidding, they give you flexibility for counting conversions, bidding, and targeting. You can also take advantage of auto exclusion to prevent ads showing to people who already have the app. So this is quite a nice feature of this type of campaign, is that it allows you to the ads just automatically won't show to people if they've already got the app installed. A few things you might want to use: remarketing lists, ads with deep links. We talked briefly about ads with deep links. That's something that works really well in app engagement campaigns. Conversion tracking to see if the campaign's working or not, and potentially having a look at them running on the search network. When you're creating engagement ads, one of the things you might want to have a look at is using a scheme to. Now, this is something that's probably the most technical part of the exam, and it may be, if you're more on the marketing side rather than on the technical build side, that this is something that might be quite new to you. So what you need to know is that a scheme is how you do deep linking for ads, for mobile ads. So it allows you to link the ad copy to a particular subsection of the app that you're trying to promote. They don't get set up automatically. You have to be done manually. And a scheme is the part of the link that identifies which app to open. And they need to be, as I said, set up manually. You specify the host and path, and the host and path sort of allow you to specify the unique location in the app where your content exists. So don't worry if this is something that is more advanced and more technical than you're used to dealing with. All you need to know is that this is how it works, and often the scheme can look slightly backwards. Often these look like it says com.example, for example, .android/. So the .com comes at the beginning of the URL rather than the end, and it can look a little bit backwards. If you're worried about it, there's a great section about it in the study guides for the mobile exam, and it's worth going through and having a quick look at that if that's something you haven't come across before. Here's another sample exam question. What would you use to customize deep links for mobile engagement ads to particular users? Would you use app extensions, an automatic scheme, an SDK? Now, an SDK is a software development kit, and it's something that definition would be worth remembering when you're passing the exam. And it can also be, or is the answer, a scheme that's set up manually? Now, you'll remember back to my last slide, and to customize deep links, you would use a scheme that's set up manually. So that's something to bear in mind when you're taking the exam. Right, we're moving on to the last section before we go into just some exam tips. When you're measuring mobile success, one of the things you really want to be keeping at the top of your mind is the full value of mobile. So often we're very bad as marketers at only measuring the things that are easy to measure. So for example, if you've got an e-commerce site, it's really easy to measure how many sales you generate from a particular part of your site, whether it's the mobile site or the app or the desktop version of the site. And often mobile will look really bad on that because a lot of people don't like converting on or don't like buying things on their mobile phones. But it's really important to start looking at the full value of mobile, because it may well be that mobile is a key part in getting people to do other things. It may be that they then do their research on their phone and then come back and buy later on their desktop, in which case perhaps you want to make sure that in an e-commerce site that you've got the option to save a basket and then reach it from another device. So the last thing you want is someone doing the research on their phone, finding a couple of things they want to buy, saving it in their basket, and then coming back onto their desktop version of the site and then having to redo it and go and find those things again, because you may well lose that sale. So try and think about ways to make it smooth for people to move from one device to the other when they're still trying to complete the same function, the same conversion. So other things that you might want to be counting are calls, whether you can find a way of tracking people coming into the store after doing a search on their phone. A couple of ways of doing that. One can be sort of giving people a coupon, for example, or a voucher, or there are other options, giving them a sort of a special code word to use when they come in. Things that you can do to try and work out what percentage of people for your particular business or a particular business search first on their phone and then walk into the shop and buy something. In app conversions and other things you might want to be counting, mobile phones have more untracked conversions because of the small screen size and non-optimized sites. So trying to track all consumer actions to see what Google's referring to as FVOM, as the full value of mobile. There are two types of app conversion tracking. There are two things you can track. And Google Analytics, if you use Google Analytics to track a particular mobile app, you get the option to track two different things. One is when the app is downloaded, and the other is in-app conversion. So you can imagine if you're Amazon, you would want to know when that app was downloaded, but also the in-app conversions, the sales that people do when they are, the purchases people make when they are in your app. So tracking that, if you're Amazon, is every bit as important as tracking regular conversion tracking for their regular desktop site, because you need to know what people buy when they're in their app. What's considered a conversion will vary across the Google networks. So search and display will be defined by the advertiser, and app promotion ads, app installs or in-app conversions, and across YouTube it'll be view-through conversions or regular conversions. There are quite a lot of questions in the exam about implementing app conversion tracking, and this again is another section, if you're not used to doing this, to go and have a look at in the guides for the advertiser guide in the Google Partners portal, because the study guides, because these can give a lot more information about all of this. We haven't got time to go through it all in detail in this hour, but so the options are, you've got different options depending on the system that your app is sitting on. So if you've got an Android app, there's a really nice feature where you can do codeless conversion tracking, because Google owns Google Play and also the searches, the ads that you're running, because you've created them in AdWords. You can link your AdWords account and your Google Play developer account, and that will automatically then spot when someone has clicked on one of your ads and then downloaded the app, and that will report it back in AdWords for you. So you don't need to implement any code at all, which is really nice. For iOS devices, that's obviously not possible. So for iOS, you have to rely on one of the other three options. One is using the Software Development Kit, SDK. One is using server-to-server, S2S, and one is doing an install feedback conversion tracking. In Android, you also have these other three options of the SDK, the server-to-server, and app install confirmation. Now, the nice thing about a lot of people might want to use an SDK, even if there is the codeless option, because what the SDK does, the mobile network is very, very fragmented. So while people, of course, would want to run ads from AdWords, they may also want to run them across other sites that are not part of AdMob or part of the Google network. And to track that can be very, very cumbersome, because if they need to run ads in lots of different places, to track all the conversions, they might need to get an SDK for every single one of those platforms that they're going to use. So there's now there are now third-party providers out there who provide one SDK that will track not just Google conversions, but also other conversions across all the other there are 20 different networks altogether, of which Google is one, and then there are 19 further ones. These third parties will collate all that information, give the developer of the app one SDK to implement, which means there's much less likely to be bugs or problems implementing it, and that will save an awful lot of time and effort for them. And Google, what's important to know is that Google can allow that, and that will work with the Google advertising as well. Another thing to be aware of is how much more information you get once you set up if you can use Google Analytics to see how your app is performing. You'll get access to a whole lot of new reports if you add Google Analytics on your app. You'll start to get things like the app overview, which will assess the general health of your app and allow you to follow data trends. It will also give options to look at the audience who are using your. It's the same reports as you'll see across lots of other analytics platforms, but particularly but these reports are particularly for your app. So it'll allow you to see who the audience are for your app. It'll allow you to see how you acquired those people with those apps. Did they come from Google? Did they come from other sorts of advertising? It'll give you the numbers of new users. It'll give you the sources of where they've come from. It'll give you the Google Play referral flow, which can be quite useful, and it will also give you an overview of how people behave once they come into your app. So that's invaluable for improving and customizing and developing your app so that it suits exactly what the users you've got coming to it want to be able to do from your app. Right, so the last slide from this section is just another sample question to give you another idea of a sort of question you might get in the exam. What will you need to get started with a website call tracking? So do you need a mobile app? Do you need an active call extension or call only ad? Do you need a Google Analytics account, or do you need a location tracking extension? I hope if you remember back, we were saying earlier that to get started with website call tracking, you need an active call extension or a call only ad. So the last section is just about taking the test. For those of you who aren't aware, the exam is 90 minutes long. What I would say is that this exam's got more technical questions on it than I think any of the others do, which means that while there are only 70 questions, often with other exams there are an awful lot of it. You get one or two very hard ones, and then suddenly you get a rash of very easy questions that you can fly through. Don't assume that's going to happen in the mobile exam. Don't allow yourself to spend hours and hours on one, or minutes and minutes on one question, and assume that you'll get some easy ones that you can make up the time later on. That's not going to be possible, so you do need to keep working through, allowing just over a minute for every question, and that way you'll get through them all. You need 80% to pass, and it's valid for 12 months. And to be certified, you then, if you have already passed one fundamentals exam, if you pass this, that will allow you to be certified. Some of the resources we've talked about already. The mobile study guide is very good, and it's worth having a quick look over it, and even when you're doing the exam, having that open next to you so that you can refer back. There's a search bar, so do use that search bar to try and find out what's going on. You also got the AdWords Help Center and the Google Partners page. Now, another one I would add to that perhaps is having an actual AdWords account open. If you can't remember which type of campaign it was that allowed you to do a particular sort of ad, mobile ad, or which sort of bid adjustments you can do, if you've got an AdWords campaign, an AdWords account open in front of you, you can literally just go in and have a quick look, and that will perhaps answer the question for you just there and then. So being familiar with the AdWords interface can be really, really beneficial. A few extra tips. Using Google search obviously is a very helpful way of finding out information when you're around. Tracking your time, as I was saying, do keep a good eye on the time. Knowing the AdWords interface, have an account open to try things out. Carefully read each question and rule out incorrect answers. So there are a lot of questions that have some that are quite trickily worded. So read them all really, really carefully and compare each answer and make sure that there's not a double negative or an extra not in there somewhere that you didn't read. And then start ruling out if it's a hard one, start ruling out the ones that you know are wrong, and then you'll only have two to choose between, and hopefully that will make it clear which one the answer is. Use your own experience, but equally at the same time, do try to think like Google. So there may be some questions where you think, oh, I definitely would never do that, but do have a, it says, which one of these four things would you do when you're setting up a new advertising campaign? So one of the best practices, for example, for mobile, is to use broad match keywords, because people mistype things when they are when they're using a mobile device much more often than they do on a desktop device. So Google recommends using broad match keywords and a lot of negatives, but it may be you've got a policy you never use broad match keywords. So a question might say which of the following is a good option for advertising on mobile. It might give you broad match, phrase, exact, and some other option. And you would think, oh, I'd never use broad match keywords, but actually if you're thinking like Google and thinking about how they would like you to advertise, you would know that the answer was broad match. So I hope that helps to get going. What we're now going to do is have a quick Q&A, so I'll come back to the questions that have been submitted, and then I'd strongly recommend that you go off and have a go at doing the exam while all of these things are fresh in your mind. I'm just going to refresh the page and make sure I've got all the most recent questions up. So I've got a few questions, people saying hi. Let's see what questions we've got. So I passed the fundamentals exam in less than 2 weeks after the Hangout, but I registered to the study huddle with my work email. I think Elizabeth has answered that question. Yes, Sharis Hickey, it will be available to catch up on later this evening. I'm sorry that the screen wasn't clear, Heidi. I hope you've been able to resolve that. And a question, how do we calculate or find the mobile computer conversion rate for a campaign or an ad group? So you'll see that if you've got conversion tracking, so this is Iva's question, if you've got conversion tracking set up already in your account, you will be able to then segment, if you use the segmentation option in your account, you'll be able to see how you'll be able to segment the campaign by device in order to be able to see it. What I'll maybe do is once we finish this, I'll come back and just put a link with the steps on how to do this, Iva, so that you can go through it step by step on how to segment your campaign, so you can see the mobile versus computer conversion rate for a campaign or an ad group. And I'll just post that here underneath the video for you to come back and see. Has anybody got any other questions? If not, I encourage you all very strongly to go off and have a go at the exam. If you don't pass it, you can always try again within 7 days. Once 7 days have passed, you can try again. But even just the attempt will give you a good idea of which areas you need to go and study up on. So that in 7 days' time, you can have another go and hopefully pass then if you haven't passed the first time. So with that, I'm going to wish you massive amounts of luck, and I hope you will have a very successful exam. You will get a certificate at the end, which will look like the one on the screen, and I wish you all the best of luck. Many thanks, and thank you very much. Goodbye.